This episode is going to be right around the holidays.
Yeah.
What is your one takeaway? So somebody's already there with their family and now it's very stressful. What is one thing that they can do in that situation to help bring their stress down?
I hope that this episode and me sharing my struggles made you aware that you're okay.
Mhm,
We all go through this, and this is a very
mhm,
normal human experience and
mhm,
human
mhm,
growth.
mhm.
And my tagline is I'm a psychiatrist who cares more about what's right with you than what's wrong with you.
Hello, and welcome back to the How Are You Really podcast. Today's episode is Boundaries, Balance, and Resilience, a holiday mental health reset. I have a wonderful guest speaker today, Dr. Uejin Kim, who talks about resilience and boundaries during the holidays as we are approaching Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year. There's a lot of family stuff that comes up and a lot of commitments and financial stress. So we talk about all of that in this episode. So stay tuned in to listen to wonderful tips from Dr. Eugene Kim. I also want to introduce her. Dr. Uejin Kim is a board certified child and adult psychiatrist, an entrepreneur, a podcast host, and a public speaker. More importantly, she's a wife, a mother of two, and a woman of faith. Using the wisdom that is grounded in both clinical expertise and compassionate vulnerability, Dr. Kim is passionate about ushering in a safe space for people to find their innate worth and gifts, nurture their unmet childhood needs, and live out their unique purpose. She believes that the spiritual, emotional work is key to a truly fulfilling, wise, and resilient life. I am going to link her all the places that her podcast is in and her free workshops down here. Please check those out. She is brilliant. She has some amazing insight and some really amazing advice to give. Hello, Dr. Eugene Kim. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you joined us. And this is a really exciting, important topic as holidays approach. So I'm looking forward to talking about this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, firstly, I want to start with, how we talk about holidays are the most wonderful time of the year, but not for everyone. It's really stressful. Let's just start with basics, right? Why do you think it gets so stressful?
Well, kind of traveling during the holidays, right? It's a lot of hassle. There's a lot of delays or overcrowded planes. So I can kind of see how people are like, it has to be worth this, right? And there's that sense of like, this has to be worth the hassle. And when you actually meet with the family member, initially it's like, yay, like we haven't seen you in so long. And after maybe 24 or 48 hours, their old traits or old habits that used to bother you it comes up and then, we're like, okay, now I have to go through the hassle of traveling back to my home. Like, was this worth it? Right. And I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of times like how we value our time and effort. And that family can be a blessing and a curse in a lot of sense.
Yeah. What do you think some of like the mental health challenges are, besides just like the old, emotional stuff coming up?
Well, I think so. I'm a child psychiatrist, so I sometimes link a lot of into the narratives that was kind of told
Mhm.
to us as a child,
Mhm.
in the childhood. And I can see that, especially in the past, when I go back home, I felt like my parents are saying the same things, or my brothers are saying the same things that hurt me before. Like, I'm trying to get therapy and trying to work on it myself, but, like, when you go back to that environment and maybe they haven't changed, and they're
Mhm.
saying the same thing or the same attitude or same perspective, then we're faced with challenge of like, okay, I'm just beginning to blossom. What does resiliency mean? Like, how do I reframe this? So there's a lot of emotional and mental toll it takes to really test the waters on, what I've been working on. And I would say that I'm really blessed that my family have reconciled,
Mhm.
for the most part and kind of grown up on our own, and it's
Mhm.
a very healthier conversation. But I know that there was a lot of times that it didn't feel like that.
Yeah. And so we come to boundaries. Why are
Mhm.
they so difficult to set? How can we set those boundaries? especially with family, right? But sometimes even with friends, especially during a stressful time like holidays. I guess the first question is, why are they so difficult to set?
It's really hard to set when it wasn't set for you before and you're doing something new. And I think sometimes, especially in Asian cultures, I don't know if you can speak on your culture, boundary feels very cold,
Mhm.
and very distant. It's like,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I don't think I even knew what boundaries were because I thought boundaries were like, oh, we're not going to talk about this topic. We're not going to, like boundaries felt like everybody's walking on eggshells and it's like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I don't want to make them mad. But actually, boundaries for me, how I redefined it is me being in tune with myself
Mhm.
and giving myself permission to not in a sense like do whatever it takes to feel safe because I feel like that's not resilient either,
Mhm.
and we can definitely talk about that. But it's like giving myself grace to be in my own journey and make mistakes
Mhm.
or grow from, situations. So I feel like we don't the lack of definition of what boundaries are and
Mhm.
also it hasn't been done before you're paving a new way that was not practiced and culturally it just feels very cold and distant and everybody gets hurt by it. So then
Mhm.
you're
Mhm.
kind of like not dealing with your own boundary struggles, but it's like
Mhm.
everybody's perception of boundaries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree. My culture is similar. South Asians, boundaries are considered disrespectful,
Mhm.
or you don't consider your family members family anymore if you try to set
Yeah.
boundaries. A lot of that comes up. It has with me.
Yeah.
If I try to
Yeah.
set boundaries, it's kind of like, oh, you disrespected us and you don't consider so and so your family member anymore. That's not how family behaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
get that from my parents a lot. But yes, so how can we communicate this without it sounding disrespectful and kind of still protect, our own well-being? Like we don't want to sound disrespectful, but we want to protect our own well-being.
Here's what I'm a little bit different when people talk about boundaries is I feel like I'm learning that you don't have to tell people what your boundaries are. And I think as I was kind of working on my boundaries, and this is like last few years, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
imagine as a psychiatrist, we're supposed to be the pro and expert at,
mhm,
knowing boundaries and emotional resiliency, but I just want to profess to everybody that we don't have it all figured out and we're kind of working on ourselves and on our journey as well. So boundary was something that was relatively new to me for my own life. We know where boundaries should be when our clients or our patients say that, but like when it comes to our own, it's like a whole other thing that we have to walk through.
yeah.
So I just want to encourage everybody that this is something is very difficult, and the fact that you're actually listening to this episode and trying to inquire more and curious about working the journey, that's awesome. I think what I was kind of referring to when boundaries is not like avoid getting hurt at all costs. I think a lot of times people cut people out or, avoid certain topics or walk on eggshells, walk on your eggshells and
Yeah.
not try to walk on other eggshells. I feel like that's really the easy way out, but actually not a complete way of reaching full resiliency. Resiliency is something that you can walk on a gravel or like stones and you don't get hurt because you have calluses on your feet and you're like, okay, I can handle this. I can handle this confrontation. I can handle this disagreement. I can handle anything. Or if people perceive me certain way, that doesn't penetrate my soul saying, oh my gosh, I'm such a horrible person because they think of me like this, right? Like resilience is sense of self that can enter into any hostile environment and say, oh, you think about me that way. Let's have a curious conversation about that. So I hope that when I say boundaries and emotional resilience, it's not like dependent on situation, is regardless of situation,
Mhm.
you can actually carry yourself and be confident in who you are at this point of the journey?
Yeah. So this is great advice. Are there some resets while navigating the whole family situation and you're using your, skills to cope? What can you do privately? You're going to have some alone time. How can you cope privately? What are some tips?
For me, what was starting to be evident over time was every time I went, revisited my family. So like I'm in San Antonio right now and my parents were in Houston. So it's like a 3 hour drive. I know it's like sporadic. Every time I felt like I was getting stronger. And that's something that I would recommend is that don't look at always like the mistakes or the flaws or the intense emotions. compare to the last time how you felt before and how you feel now, because I know 100% that you probably feel a little bit more assured of yourself or more confident with yourself because you're actively working on, resiliency and competency and, boundaries, right? So
Mhm.
celebrate how much you have changed each time, even though when you're going through the fire, it feels like crap. But then you look back to last time you felt like crap. Oh, you feel a little bit better. Like you're like, oh, I responded more with grace this time. Like I didn't react like I did last time, so these are worth celebrating.
Yeah. Coming back to or coming to because you just said that you're in San Antonio and your family's in Houston. So,
Mhm.
people have moved away from where their families are, and traveling can be sometimes expensive, so people decide not to go, and then at that point, you're alone, and there's a loneliness factor during the holidays. How do you think people can cope with that when, your entire family, like, they're all together, and now you're the only
Mm.
one kind of alone in a city?
Now, I don't know, maybe if you can clarify, is like if the reason why you're alone and didn't travel, I think it could be twofold is number 1 is not worth the hassle because you're avoiding the conflict or potential, flare-ups of relational like or emotional stress. Or number 2, you're actually taking time off to actively invest in yourself, like what when we say kind of going no contact. And I think no contact is a very popular term now, but I always say regardless of what you do, it could be a defense mechanism or coping skill.
Mhm,
Defense mechanism is you're avoiding pain and the problems in your life. Coping skill is a break so that you can go back to attack the problems and look for solutions in your life. So,
mhm,
number 1 is I would ask like why are you not going there? Like
mhm,
is it a defense mechanism or is it coping skills?
mhm,
Because if it is coping skills, then I think you know that this is an active choice that you made to work on yourself for the season. And, sometimes that kind of FOMO or jealousy might happen whenever you see the pictures, but just know that you made this decision for you and that maybe this is a season and you can go back to the holidays with your family with a better version of yourself. Um, so there's an element of like, why did you choose to not go?
mhm,
That will kind of help you clarify like, oh, what can I do in this season?
mhm,
Is it a season to have friendsgiving, or is it a season to actually go and visit your family members? I
mhm.
think it'll be kind of become more clear
Yeah.
once you define that.
Yeah. And what about for people that possibly can't afford to, travel? There's people that are here and their families are out of the country, we kind of
Yeah,
get that,
absolutely.
right? And then
Yeah.
or, East Coast versus West Coast, there's a lot of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
reasons why people
Yeah.
if
And
that
I think that's like legit.
Mhm.
And I think it's like in my online course, there is a part called Solution Party.
Mhm.
And it's like connection and being together doesn't have to be being physically together. So it's like, what are my options to really connect with my family members when it's not within my financial means or it'll be unwise for me to travel this time? Like, can I try visiting them off season, when the flights are cheaper? Or can I FaceTime with them? Or can I write with them? So there's a lot of options to promote and encourage like connection.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking about COVID, right? During that time
Yeah,
that
that
we
was
didn't
a
have a choice to travel,
yeah, right.
and a lot of
Those
us
was dark times for
yeah.
all of us.
Yeah, and, like, I think it was either my niece or nephew's birthday, and we all just got online on Zoom or some other platform, and then, the cake cutting, and then afterwards, we actually like, there was some game that we were able to somehow play, like, as siblings, which is
Yeah,
kind of fun that we did that on.
yeah,
So, I agree, like, there's always ways to participate and, get together. That's a really good advice. How do you feel about, when people are doing the whole I am no contact, right? And that's not
mm,
because they're working. It's kind of like, oh, this person doesn't treat me right, so I'm just gonna cut them off, right? Especially in around the holidays. How do you like, I guess, advise your patients to maybe change their mindset or, what should they do when they're just angry and doing that?
When I was kinda going through my own thing, I had so much anger towards my family members, and nowadays, there's, like, so many videos that are like, "Oh, like, how to treat your narcissistic family member," or, like, like, how to beat them to the ground, and, "Can you believe that they said this to you? That's a narcissistic trait." There's, like it's like a trend, right?
Mhm,
And I think as a psychiatrist, you and I can agree, like, there's a role to identifying unhealthy behaviors.
mhm,
But what I found in my heart was I was like reading and watching these videos and I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's toxic. That's blah, blah, blah. But it didn't really free me from anger.
mhm,
I just stayed angry. And at certain point, I was like, I don't want to stay this angry.
mhm,
I want to be happy and I want to be resilient. I want to grow and I don't want to stay here boohooing myself or cutting anyone and everyone who makes me feel unsafe. Like I want to feel safe no matter what. So there was an end of the road where I had to decide this is not the future that I want for me. And that's what I say to my clients or my friends, family, anything. It's like,
mhm,
people come and go, but who do you wanna be? What do you wanna be able to do? What do you wanna be able to handle? And I think the beauty of psychiatry is I see age 4 to 64, and I see a lot of successful people in their 60s, like, looking back in their life, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not close with my grown-up kids," or, like, "This is my 4th marriage, and I still don't know the ins and outs of healthy relationship." Like, we hear those stories,
mhm,
and we're like and and I think that's the beauty of being a psychiatrist, that I take it with a humility and I see it as a blessing that we can see the patterns of resilience and growth, and age is just a number when it comes to that.
mhm,
So it's like I want to encourage everybody, like, where do you wanna be when you are older?
mhm.
Like, what kind of person do you wanna be? Do you wanna be the one who's cutting off people just on a whim and with everything and everything? Or do you wanna be able to say communicate like, "Hey, I didn't like what you said, but can we just talk about that?"
Yeah, that is definitely helpful advice and kind of, I guess, recognizing in your own self when you're ready to possibly, let go of the anger, not so much that you're being forced to forgive or,
Mhm.
forget or recognizing that. What are some tips for people to recognize that, the holidays are bringing this that, stress or, just I think that I do it in a way, but, like, is there some advice people can look out for when they're starting to feel this way?
Feel
The
like they don't
anger
wanna
and
be
just the
angry
stress
anymore?
coming from just as holidays are approaching.
Yeah. I always say that, and you mentioned, like, forgive and forget, right? You
Mhm,
can't forgive what you cannot forget. And I think I tried that where I would, like, fake forgive just to get along, like, go along to get along kind of thing, and it really backfired because I'm still angry, I still feel like this is not fair, and my anger will come out in a ugliest ways. It's just, like, backfires on everybody.
mhm,
So for people who are like, "Oh my gosh, you know what? Dr. Kim is right. I do still feel angry. I don't wanna be like this forever, but what do I do with my anger?" And for me, my advice is feel it. Feel it to totality.
mhm,
Don't suppress it. Don't repress it. Don't rationalize it. Don't intellectualize it.
mhm,
Just let yourself be okay with feeling angry and express it. I always say that emotion's like a wave. If you
mhm,
don't know how to ride the wave, then you don't control the water,
mhm,
right? But if you realize, oh, it's a wave and it eventually comes down if I give myself full permission to feel it and express it, then you'll feel more comfortable with emotions. Like big emotions like anger and sadness, right? Like even excitement. Like it's an emotion that comes up and comes down, and once you're more familiar with that, I think that will definitely empower you to go back to potentially a hostile environment, and to test how much stronger you are, this year around.
Yeah, so in the context of the holidays coming up, I'll just give my own example. When you're first generation or an immigrant, you have your family might now be like a distant family that you're still close with. So
Mhm.
I'm very close with my uncle's wife's family.
Mhm.
So her sister is doing Thanksgiving this year, but they're all the way in, I'm gonna say, wherever it's gonna be snowing, really, Sioux Falls, Idaho, or something, where it's gonna be
Uh-huh.
snowing already in November, and the flights are extremely expensive because there's no direct flight, and, it's just gonna be a lot, and I feel like I've had so many other commitments this year that I can't travel, but, my aunt calls me and she's like, "Can't believe you're not coming, and you should be coming," and, um,
Mhm.
so what about how that was very stressful, right? And I know I cannot go. I have, like, commitments with my in-laws too who are here. So how do you deal with that? Because it's almost like she thinks it's, like, a little disrespectful, like, her sister came to my wedding, and she tries to make it
Mhm,
all of
mhm.
our events, So how do I navigate this kind of situation? What would you recommend to others?
Yeah, this is interesting. You said the key word. She said, "You should be coming."
Mhm. Mhm.
Should is a word that I always pay attention to.
Mhm.
Who says that
Mhm.
you should?
Mhm.
Or who says I should,
Mhm.
right? And I think I always pay attention to that because when you use the word should, then you're putting morality into the equation where then there's a right or wrong,
Mhm.
but there's no such thing as right or wrong, So I would say that's number one is that whenever you think there's a cognitive distortion of shoulds, right?
Mhm.
Whenever somebody else says should or whenever you equate the options as should or should not, then you
Mhm.
kind of have to watch out for why do I feel so strongly about these things?
Mhm. Mhm.
That there's a word should, where did this come from?
Mhm.
And the second thing is I'm not saying to your particular relative that did that, but I think what we all want is trust and intimacy with our family members that is beyond just proving that we're close. It's like, despite not being here, I want the benefit of the doubt that I want to be there,
Mhm.
but I can't, and if you give yourself that grace to interpret that for you, I think that's a start of something more beautiful where a family member who understands each other's intention and effort despite what they are and not able to do, right? And I think that's the culture that we all want to start in our own families.
Yeah, that's really beautiful advice. I think that I did kind of say that to her that, I absolutely love my aunt and uncle. They played a part in raising me, and so it gets hard because then it's her sister, and I would love to be them. I really enjoy everyone's company and everything, but it's just is not something that I can time-wise or financially even afford right now to do. And
Yeah.
so that's really a beautiful way of putting it, making sure that the other person knows that I would love to be with them, and
Yeah.
it is nothing personal, right? That I'm
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's amazing advice. So talking about financial, holidays can be financial, emotionally, and I guess I call it time because time is also very valuable, right? They
Mhm.
are so stressful, everything. We're being pulled in different directions, and it's already possibly a big financial burden buying all the gifts and everything, Black Friday sale, all of this. How can people cope in this, with all the pressures around them?
I would say, like, scan through your internal dialogue and see if there should be shoulds in there. Like, oh, they should get this gift because I love them and this is their favorite toy. Like, so they should get this. I should get this big tree because this is what we do as a tradition every year and it should be a tradition. It should continue to be a tradition. Or,
Mhm.
yes, we should visit them because they visited us. So now we should visit them. There's a lot of shoulds. And when there's so many shoulds, like, we know we can't, like fulfill all the shoulds,
Mhm.
right? But
Mhm.
it just creates an internal pressure of us, what we should be and should buy and should do, and it's kind of related. So it's like, I'll say when my oldest was like about 5, there was this pressure of having this extravagant birthday party because that's what all his friends were doing. And I felt like I didn't want him to feel like left out or less than, and I had that sense of kind of chip on my shoulder to prove that I'm a good mom by
Mhm.
throwing this extravagant birthday parties, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But, I got a life coach during that time, and and I have a video on this that I can share with you so that you can put in descriptions, be
Mhm,
versus do. So
mhm,
I had to come to my values as a mom. What do I want him to feel on his birthday? Well, I want him to feel special.
mhm.
And that's my goal. Like I want him to feel cherished, that he's part of our family. I want him to feel that he's very important in our lives, and I want him to celebrate, who he is. So then that's what I want to be as a mom for him. But do is, so how we're gonna do that. So does that mean that it has to be extravagant? It has to have the balloon, like those balloon
Arch.
rainbows? Does it have to mean that we have to go to Legoland? No. So it's like then I really cater to how do I make him feel special, versus what do I need to do? What should I do? So when you kind of come back to this crazy holiday times and you sense a lot of shoulds, in your heart and your brain, maybe go back to your values and what kind of connection, what kind of intimacy, what kind of moments do you want to create with your family? And that might actually clarify what is a true shoulds and what is not true shoulds.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that is definitely something from a financial standpoint everyone needs to look at. What about all the holiday parties that you're getting invited to and you feel
Hmm.
obligated? There's that work one and then your friends one and then the family
Yeah.
one. How do you and then your kids' parents are doing,
Yeah.
so as in your kids' friends' parents. So how do you navigate all of that stress, because that is a lot of time investment.
Well, kind of going back, if you erase all the shoulds,
Mhm,
right? So
mhm,
there's still 10 options, like 10 parties to go to. It's learning to prioritize. That's really hard for people like you and me or anyone who wants to be all and everything, but in that be versus do video, I kind of talk about my academic advisor in college. So
mhm,
like I was like, I want to be A plus plus in everything kind of person, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
because each A plus plus gives me sense of validation and value. But what he told me was from people who, so I went to Hopkins, which is probably like academically very rigorous
mhm, mhm.
undergrad, and it
Yeah.
just like weeds people out. And I was really struggling to get a good grade, like even pass sometimes, right? So then I was like asking him, like, how do I do this? And he said from people that are academically, thriving to average academic performance, he sees that only difference is that people who are academically successful knows how to prioritize from top to bottom. But everybody who tries to do everything, their priority list is horizontal. And he's like, just accept that you can't do everything excellently
Yeah.
and learn to focus on few and you'll be fine. And that was such a life-giving exercise and a mindset because like I have to accept that I can't be present or excellent in everything. So what am I going to put my attention and effort into if that's the last few things that I can do? So it's like, we bring it back to the topics of parties, right? Like which
Mhm,
party will give you the most sense of connection in life?
mhm.
And enjoyment and talk about it as a family. Like maybe you have kids, like what do they want to go to? And then pick the few that you can go and you don't have to go to the other ones.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I know we started with talking a little bit about cultural issues and then there's also generational and you and
Mm,
I of course have like our subculture but then even in the American culture or just people that have been in the US forever their families will have these traditions or their little culture, right? So how do you navigate that during the holiday because that also brings its own set of tensions, right? For example, like I said that possibly, I don't know, but, like, my family would have had different feelings if maybe we weren't South Asian about, going to Thanksgiving versus that they have these feelings, but then everyone's family is different, and there are these generational trends or, rituals or, whatever they do. How do you when you're feeling guilty and there's tension then in the family, how do you navigate that?
can you give me an example of what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah, so, it's one thing that, family takes offense, right? But then they also, sometimes then it becomes tension that, "Oh, they didn't come to our thing, so whenever you're hosting another thing, we're not gonna come to that." And
Mm,
then just individually, personally too, now you have all this guilt.
Yeah.
So that kind of how do you navigate, that tension in the family, but then also just the tension within yourself?
Um, that's interesting because I was talking to my friend who's Pakistani and Indian, and they were telling me because I'm going back to Korea. It's been 20 years since I went back to Korea like this month. So, it's gonna be and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like how are you gonna deal with that? Like how many family members do you have to, visit when you're there?" And I'm only gonna be there for a week. And I was like, well, actually, like I think they arranged it so that every all the relatives come for like one dinner and like that checks all the boxes. And they're like, I'm so jealous because for me, like if I have to go back to my town, I have to visit the relatives in their home, or they're gonna say, "Oh, America changed you, like you're so disrespectful," and stuff like that. So then I said, well, maybe it's like a good and bad thing that at least within my family, we're very like we don't have a lot of traditions. And maybe that's like a bad thing. Or like expectations. I think it's like very practical. So that being said, I can understand that expectations with such a big family, like it could be very taxing and everybody has their own expectations and they're bringing to the plate. So for me as a Korean, I share that story. So I can't be like completely, like I can understand because so there's number one, like my family tends to be very like very not like tradition or there was some expectations that my mom and I had to like kind of work through. But when it comes to holiday tradition, there was not. So I can't feel that pressure now. But so for me, like in my faith, there is a verse in the Bible says when husband and wife get married, they leave and cleave and make their own family. So that was
Mhm,
something that I was like, my husband and I'm creating our own tradition with our kids, and making sure that that's when we're talking about priority, right? Like that's the highest priority because that's something that is I'm gonna be accountable for and I'm responsible for. So that was really important for us to say, what's our family tradition? And I think spending time with relatives is definitely part of that tradition, but how much and um how involved you are with the relatives, I think you can kind of control that. So
mhm,
that's always kind of the front of my mind is what kind of tradition and values do I want to instill in my kids when it comes to
mhm,
holidays and
mhm,
expectations, our own expectations of
mhm,
what this is about. And it's not about pleasing other people. It's about really celebrating connections and family. So I don't know if I adequately answer that, but it's kind of going back to what is your priority and what is your role in this and what can you do and what
mhm.
can you not do?
Yeah. I really like kind of creating your own traditions for your little family that that you have now. So I think that is, I think very helpful because what we tend to do is we feel very bound to all. I feel like, okay, what are my in-laws going to want to
Mhm,
do?
mhm, mhm.
What is my own family going to want to do? Thankfully, my husband is very flexible, so that
Yeah.
helps me. He'll just be like, whatever you want to do. So
Yeah.
that's very helpful. So, but at the same time, there is a lot of pressure with that. But I really like that. Whether you have faith or not. And I'm thinking about one of my patients from last year who was struggling with this because they had, their in-laws would like make comments and stuff like that that were
Mm,
just not healthy, and then they had been there for Thanksgiving and it was very stressful with one of the sister-in-laws or something, and then so for Christmas they were just completely super stressed out about
mhm.
going. And so I kind of brought up that, like, do something with your own family and your own kids, and
Yeah.
and that's okay to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
and okay to bring up to your family that we just want to do something intimate with my kids.
Yeah.
So, and I think they did end up doing that, and actually really it was relaxing for them.
Oh, that's
So
good. Cause like
yeah.
it's like I always think like what do our kids want to remember holidays? Like do you want them
Hmm.
to Doesn't mean that you never visit, but do they want to always kinda see you stressed out about pleasing other people and just saying, "Oh my gosh, if I don't do this, they're gonna think of me like that." Like, I mean, if I
Mhm,
say it like that, of course we don't, right? So then
mhm,
I think it all comes down to, like, owning your
mhm,
experience and
mhm,
your journey
mhm,
because maybe it's not about doing the right things and making sure that you're pleasing
mhm,
everybody.
mhm.
Maybe it's just you being confident in your own skin, and that's what we want to model after our kids.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So, because this episode is gonna be right around the holidays,
Yeah.
what is your one takeaway? So somebody's already there with their family and now it's very stressful. What is one thing that they can do in that situation to help bring their stress down?
I hope that this episode and me sharing my struggles made you aware that you're okay.
Mhm,
We all go through this, and this is a very
mhm,
normal human experience and
mhm,
human growth, and my tagline is I'm a psychiatrist who cares more about what's right with you than what's wrong with you. And there's so
mhm.
many things that there's so many right things about you and we can celebrate even at your lowest moments.
Yeah. And so now that, they're trying to work on remembering that they're okay, how can they carry this forward as the new year comes? Like, how can they continue to practice that?
So I have a course called Be Still to Move Forward and
Mhm,
is the online course really kind of talks about we do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, like thought reframing exercise, and really getting in touch
mhm,
with our inner child, and making sure that
mhm,
you're raising and nurturing your inner child so that she or he can be fearless and courageous, and confident no matter where you go. I love that work because whenever I got in touch with little Eugene, and I
mhm,
realized, oh my
mhm,
gosh, her childhood and her innocence and her purity needs to be protected. That gave me like a little bit of sense of purpose to really walk out this journey of resiliency and
mhm,
setting boundaries and protecting her at all costs. And I think
mhm,
maybe you'll get in touch with me, during the holidays or maybe New Year's, but it's that there's a little girl and little boy inside all of us that is desperately wanting that protection and nurture and guidance from us. And that's worth fighting for and that's worth working towards. And
mhm,
I hope that this like image that, oh my gosh, there is a little person in me that's waiting for me to show up and
mhm,
guide and protect and that really is like a spiritual journey, right? Because it opens up the realm of sense of purpose, sense of
mhm.
calling, sense of community, sense of acceptance. And I just hope that that aura or that vibe really carries you through the holidays and move forward because we're all special, and we're all worthy of, protection and nurture and guidance.
That's such a good answer. I love
Yeah.
that. So I always like to ask at the end, how are you really doing?
I like that. Um I just love being vulnerable in the interview because it's like a testimony to me that, man, I overcame a lot of stuff, and there were days where I would just cry uncontrollably or feel sad, for all the things that happened to me. And I share some of that here. And I'm really well, not because everything is perfect, but I see how much I have grown, and
Mhm,
that I'm more fearless when it comes to handling conflicts, or maybe
mhm,
potentially a hostile environment. And
mhm.
and no matter who disagrees with me or get a bad review on Google, like for our practice or something, like now I can like not personalize everything. Like I'm like, oh, they can have their perspective and opinion, and I can have my opinion on what kind of
Mhm.
psychiatrist I am. I'll take it with a grain of salt and continue to improve, So in that sense, I feel like I've grown a lot and really feel blessed to and grateful for that.
Amazing. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about this really important topic. I can't wait to check out some of your do you have, like, courses? Is that what that
Yeah, so
is?
I have a
Y
Be Still
yeah.
to Move Forward course. I have a parenting coaching package using that course because um just like a shameless vulnerability again, I had to work on myself because I was repeating what my parents said to me to my kids.
Mhm.
And I
Mm,
was like, "Oh my god," like, I told myself I will not do this, and I'm doing it. So it's like, I need to work on me, so that my kids will have legitimate childhood, like, if you will. So I do parent coaching using that course because when we get in touch with our inner child, then we let ourselves to be a children again so that our children
mhm.
can be children.
Mm.
So that's really my passion. So I'll definitely put the description to you so that you can put the links down below.
Yeah.
And that's my passion is that everybody become more emotionally resilient so that we can protect our childhood.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I'm thinking about how I don't have kids, but my husband and I will do it to each other at times. Like like, we just got our kitchen redone and, the quartz, countertop, and he's like, "Don't leave any splash of water on there." He kept getting so angry at me, and I'm like, "Well, I'm washing dishes, what do you expect?" And so come to find out, his mom used to, like, yell at them for any splashes
Yeah.
of water. And so, we made up and we figured out that, okay, it doesn't have to be right that second. But it was just it's so interesting that we
Yeah.
will do it to anyone that we love and we're close to, whatever
Yeah,
or what was,
absolutely.
you know, the ways that were taught to us and the way it was taught to us, right?
Yes,
So,
yes, yes.
yeah, so this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for taking out the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Before we close, I always ask, how are you really doing? Thank you so much for spending this time with us on How Are You Really? If something in this episode spoke to you, send it to a friend, leave a review, or follow the show. It really helps. Until next time.